The armchair had become Eleanor's anchor, a plush prison she willingly entered each morning. At 68, the vibrant woman who once scaled mountain trails and dug vigorous flower beds now found her world shrinking to the comfortable confines of her living room. A faint ache, a persistent wobble in her knees had begun as a whisper, easily dismissed as the inevitable creak of getting on. But lately it was a shout, and the fear was a cold knot in her stomach. Her days unfolded with a predictable, gentle rhythm. After her first cup of tea, she'd settle into her favourite velvet armchair, a weighty historical novel open on her lap. Hours would melt into pages, the sunlight shifting across the polished floor. When her eyes grew tired, she'd migrate to the small desk in the corner, losing herself in online crosswords or researching obscure facts for her local history group. By late afternoon, the sofa beckoned, offering the escapism of a documentary or a classic film until dinner. Each transition involved little more than a shuffle across the carpet, her legs rarely asked to do more than hold her upright for a few brief moments. The change was insidious. The stairs, once a mere thoughtless ascent, now loomed like a challenge, each step a conscious effort, her hand gripping the banister with white-knuckled intensity. Carrying groceries from the car felt like hauling lead, her arms trembling, her legs threatening to buckle. "It's just old age, Eleanor," she'd murmur to herself, a mantra of resignation. "What did you expect? You can't fight time." The frustration simmered, a bitter taste, as her independence felt like sand slipping through her fingers. During her annual physical, she'd cautiously mentioned the increasing weakness to Dr. Evans. He'd nodded, a kind but distant look in his eyes. "It's a natural part of aging, Eleanor. Keep active, eat well. We all slow down eventually." His words, meant to reassure, only solidified her quiet despair. There was no cure for time, no antidote for the invisible thief stealing her strength. The doctor's pronouncement echoed in Eleanor's mind like a death knell for her active life. Natural part of aging. It was a phrase that offered no solutions, only resignation. The following Tuesday, seeking a distraction from her gloom, she found herself at the community centre, ostensibly to browse the library's new arrivals, but mostly to escape the quiet confines of her increasingly confining home. She settled into a worn armchair in the common area, nursing a cup of lukewarm tea, her gaze drifting aimlessly. Nearby, two women, perhaps in their late 60s, were deep in conversation. Eleanor wasn't intentionally eavesdropping, but their voices carried, especially the more emphatic one. "And he said it's not just age, Carol, it's the sitting," the woman exclaimed, her voice hushed but firm. "All those hours hunched over a book or watching telly. It's like we're slowly draining the strength from our own legs." Eleanor's head snapped up. Draining? Her initial reaction was a scoff. Dr. Evans, a highly respected physician, hadn't mentioned anything about sitting. But the woman continued. "My granddaughter's physio called them movement snacks. Little bursts throughout the day, not a big workout, just movement." Eleanor felt a peculiar jolt. Movement snacks. It sounded almost childish, too simple to be true. She had visions of intense gym sessions, of painful stretches she couldn't manage. "Like what?" Carol asked, voicing Eleanor's own silent question. "Like standing up during every commercial break, even just for 30 seconds. Or walking to the mailbox instead of waiting for your husband. Stretching your calves while the kettle boils. Or doing a few squats while you wait for the microwave." The speaker paused, then added, "He said it's about breaking up those long periods of inactivity. It reawakens the muscles." A slow, dawning realization bloomed in Eleanor. She thought of her own days, hours spent knitting, reading, watching documentaries, barely moving from her favorite armchair. The doctor's words had implied an irreversible decline, but this offered a different narrative. Could her increasing weakness not be an inevitable decay, but a consequence of her own habits? The idea, initially met with deep skepticism, began to morph into a tantalizing intrigue. It was so simple, so low effort. What if, just what if, this whisper of movement held the hidden truth she'd been desperate to find? Eleanor started small, setting a timer for every hour. When it chimed, she would simply stand, stretch her arms above her head, and sit back down. The first few days were an exercise in sheer discipline, her muscles protesting with stiffness, her mind resisting the interruption to her beloved routines. Each stand felt like lifting a small weight, a conscious, often uncomfortable effort. But she persisted, driven by the image of that unseen drain, steadily siphoning her vitality. Gradually, imperceptibly at first, the effort lessened. One morning she rose from her armchair to fetch a book, only to realize she hadn't braced herself with her hands or pushed off with a grunt. A small, quiet victory. Her trips to the kitchen became steadier, less prone to the sudden lurch that used to send a jolt of fear through her. She found herself walking with a newfound lightness, her balance improving to the point where she could navigate her living room without constantly scanning for furniture to lean on. The changes blossomed into everyday miracles. She walked to the local park, not just to the first bench, but completing a full loop, feeling a pleasant fatigue instead of crushing exhaustion. At the grocery store, she carried a small bag of apples and oranges back home without her arms aching or her legs trembling. One afternoon, a favourite old jazz tune came on the radio, and Eleanor, without conscious thought, found herself swaying gently, a soft, spontaneous dance she hadn't allowed herself in years. The music flowed through her, not around her. The true testament came during her granddaughter's graduation. Held in an old university building, the ceremony was on the second floor, accessible only by a grand, sweeping staircase. Instead of waiting for the slow, often crowded lift, Eleanor took a deep breath, placed her hand lightly on the banister, and ascended. Step by steady step, she climbed, feeling the strength in her legs propel her upwards, reaching the top with a triumphant, unbidden smile and barely a whisper of breathlessness. The world no longer felt like a series of insurmountable obstacles. Over tea with her friends, Eleanor shared her quiet revolution. It wasn't about grueling workouts or joining a gym, she explained, her eyes sparkling with newfound energy. It was just moving. Often. A little bit, many times a day. I don't need workouts. I just need to move more often. Her friends, witnessing the vibrant woman before them, listened intently, inspired by the simple, profound wisdom that had reclaimed Eleanor's strength and, with it, her entire world.